Picture a woman on the banks of the Nile 4,000 years ago. She's stirring sugar, a squeeze of lemon, and a little water into something golden and slow, like warm honey. She tests it with a fingertip, presses it to her skin, and pulls once. The hair lifts away clean. No smoke, no lasting sting. Now hold that picture in your mind, because centuries later, other women chasing that exact same smoothness would walk into hot, steaming rooms to boil arsenic and quicklime. They took toxic chemicals, compounds that could peel flesh right off the bone, and painted them onto their own bodies. The Renaissance recipes for these pastes even carried a warning right in the instructions. You were told to wait until your skin started to feel hot and then wash the paste off quickly, before your own flesh came away with the hair. This piece of ancient Egyptian papyrus shows just how seriously humanity took this ritual. Written around 1,500 years before our era, this is a medical scroll. Right alongside remedies for broken bones and fevers, doctors recorded formulas for removing unwanted hair, which leaves us with a strange question. If humans figured out how to safely remove hair with sugar thousands of years ago, why did we spend the next several centuries smearing ourselves with poisons that could kill us? Look at the smooth marble of this ancient Greek athlete statue. In classical Greece, the human body was a sacred sculpture, and visible hair was a flaw, blurring physical perfection. To be smooth was to belong to a world valuing beauty and order. You can see the scale of this expectation in the ruins of massive Roman bathhouses like this one. Here, smoothness evolved into a moral code. Being polished and hairless was a public display of purity, proving you had the wealth, servants, and leisure to stand above the lower classes. Even the man depicted in this commanding bronze, Emperor Augustus, bowed to the standard. The most powerful ruler in the world reportedly singed the hair from his own legs by pressing hot, heated walnut shells against his skin. By the Renaissance, the social pressure had calcified into something actively cruel. Physicians of the era wrote that a woman who carried facial or body hair was cursed, disagreeable, and wrong in her very nature. To have hair was to invite quiet, permanent judgment from society. When the alternative is a lifetime of social exile and being branded unwomanly, the terrifying choice starts to make sense. Women reached for flesh-eating poisons because the moral judgment of the era was far more frightening than a chemical burn. They reached for whatever their era offered. Some applied a paste made of cat dung and vinegar. Others imported a Middle Eastern paste known as rusma, blending slaked lime with orpiment, a brilliant golden yellow mineral that is actually a form of arsenic. But if people were casually covering themselves in corrosive poisons, how did they survive? Why didn't their bodies simply dissolve down to nothing? This animation shows a microscopic comparison of your body's chemistry. Hair is incredibly rich in a specific protein, bound tightly together by strong structural links called disulfide bonds. The surrounding skin contains far less of that specific protein. When you apply a caustic paste of quicklime and arsenic, the chemical goes hunting for those exact bonds. It violently breaks them apart. Robbed of its structural integrity, the hair simply collapses and wipes away. The poison still attacks the skin, but because the skin lacks that dense network of vulnerable proteins, the corrosion happens much slower. It gives you a narrow window to frantically wash the paste off before it reaches bone. These routines were entirely unsafe. For centuries, people were blindly relying on a terrifyingly thin biological margin of error, where the hair simply surrendered a few minutes before the flesh did. By the early 1900s, scenes like this pristine cosmetic laboratory offered a compelling new promise. Modern science stepped in with an odorless cream that supposedly cured the problem permanently, without the ancient pain. This vintage advertisement promises instant removal without the slightest injury to delicate skin. The terrifying reality was that the active ingredient in some of these early 20th century miracle creams was thallium, a highly toxic heavy metal commonly used as rat poison. Women who used these creams did lose their hair, but the heavy metal quickly accumulated in their bodies. They suffered from severe illnesses, mass poisoning, and terrifying nerve damage. Within a few years, the companies behind these creams collapsed into bankruptcy. They left behind near-empty bank vaults and millions of dollars in lawsuits from people whose lives had been permanently ruined. The first attempt to solve this problem with modern science did not protect anyone. It only provided a highly efficient, commercially packaged way to deliver poison directly to the consumer. It took decades for chemistry to finally catch up to the human desire to be smooth. Scientists eventually isolated milder compounds that could quietly snap those disulfide bonds in the hair without actively scorching the surrounding flesh. Those careful discoveries gave us the calm, odorless depilatory creams sitting quietly on pharmacy shelves today. The poison, at long last, was removed from the equation. Looking at this collection of ancient Egyptian grooming tools reminds us of the scale of this pursuit. The longing for a smooth body is woven through 6,000 years of human history, touching priests, athletes, emperors, and ordinary people alike. The dream of elegance remained exactly the same from the ancient world to the modern era. We just finally acquired the hard-won wisdom to separate our beauty routines from the very real threat of death. After millennia of burns, quicklime, and heavy metals, it turns out the woman standing on the banks of the Nile, calmly pressing a sweet sugar paste to her skin, had the right idea all along. Sometimes the gentlest answer is the only one that lasts.